Thank you for this beautiful day. And Lord, we pray that this seminar will be a success. Give us all the wisdom. You are the author of wisdom. We appreciate and acknowledge you, and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Honorable Minister, Governor, honorable members of Parliament present here, distinguished guests, executive yelibhange, tonke timenya leticavile siyanivusela ekuseni. I'm trying to use also my Siswati, Governor, whilst you are finishing your breakfast. I'm not here to make any remarks. My tasks this morning is to coordinate. I think I will write in the protocols that the governor will mention so that I'm not found in error. Because I know governor will make the right protocols. I will find myself having to miss one or two, and then I'm in trouble. Our program for today should be very interesting, because we are expecting that the minister will highlight to us, including our view, the ones who have joined online, what exactly inspired him to come up with the budget. There will be reaction from business, MPs, and other stakeholders on the minister's budget, and then we will also invite some of you to make comments later on. And I'm hoping that we will do this in an orderly manner. Obviously, for us, it's just to make sure that when Lunga is saying I've spoken too much, ours is to make sure that we just make the minister remember one or two things that stakeholders might be interested in. And then I think when they discuss some of these matters in Parliament, also the members of Parliament have a few things to make sure that the minister remembers what stakeholders said. Governor, at this point, please come and make your welcome remarks. When the governor comes, I need to run away from the pulpit because you can see.
Thank you. No problem. I'll hold it. Program Director, our Director Research at the Central Bank of Eswatini, Mr. Skhumbuzo Dlamini, Honorable Minister for Finance, members of both Houses of Parliament, senior government officials, panelists, captains of industry, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Before I get to my formal speech, may I also acknowledge those that are joining us virtually. Because of the size of our venue, we were intentional to ensure that we have got quite a good contingent that is joining us virtually, and we warmly welcome them and thank you for joining us this morning. You are meeting at the new Central Bank headquarters. Phase 1 will be commencing in a couple of months, and we want to thank you for honoring the invitation and to be here this morning. Apologies if there are any elements of inconvenience. It's not meant to be a hotel. In fact, soon, the whole Central Bank will be moving down here, and the rooms will be turned into offices, and an environment will be created. And we believe by doing so, we are going to create proper alignment of culture within the bank, and of course, accelerate the development, the phase 1 that was commissioned by their majesties last year. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for coming, and we are truly honored. We welcome you to the 2025 post-budget seminar hosted by the Central Bank of Eswatini. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to both the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank of Eswatini for investing their time and limited resources in this important discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of this seminar is to bring together stakeholders from all sectors of society to deliberate and brainstorm on the 2025-26 national budget as was presented by the Honorable Minister at the House of a few weeks ago. Our goal is to assist the Ministry of Finance and the government to effectively execute the budget to deliver the key services to the people of Eswatini. We wish to commend the Minister for Finance once again for availing himself and agreeing to deliver the keynote address, focusing on the highlights of his 2025-26 budget speech. We sincerely appreciate you, Honorable Minister, for taking the time from your very busy schedule to be with us this morning. I hear that as professionals, and we must avoid the word busy. I don't know, we are still Inati, the CEO of Business Eswatini, and I are still looking for a synonym because we believe we cannot do away with the word busy. But be that as it may, we thank you, Minister, from scheduling this from your very busy schedule. To our panelists and distinguished guests, we hope you have all had the opportunity to familiarize yourself with the budget in order to facilitate an interactive session with the Honorable Minister this morning. Program Director, the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance recognize the importance of facilitating a forum for professionals from both the public and private sectors to share their insights on the national budget. This seminar aims to create a platform for stakeholders to discuss key issues related to the budget, ultimately helping to inform the Minister on how to effectively address these pertinent concerns moving forward. Furthermore, the seminar will provide stakeholders with an opportunity to share information in an open environment, and your input is truly invaluable. Honorable Minister, I would like to bring to your attention that a group of panelists from the different spheres of society will share their insights on the budget. Their contributions are intended to reflect the sentiments of these sectors regarding the proposed budget. We appreciate them for honoring our invitation to be the lead discussants in this forum. The panelists have been selected from various stakeholders, including the business community, civil society, international development partners, legislators, and independent intellectuals. Distinguished guests, you will recall that the Minister for Finance delivered a national budget for 2025-26 fiscal year to Parliament on 14th February 2025, themed Transformation for Growth. The budget was introduced as a pro-growth national budget that was developed through inclusive and comprehensive consultations with Emaswati, chiefs, members of parliament, Tinduna Tetingundla, the Community Development Council, across all 4 regions of the country. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably the first time where the minister really took the conversation of the budget to the communities bottom up in response to the call that was made at Sibaya. And I feel it is appropriate at this point to really give a big hand of applause to the Minister of Finance and the Finance Minister for executing this mandate, which was called by the nation. May I request her to give a big hand of applause in this regard. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. The budget aligns with His Majesty's speech from the throne delivered at the opening of the second session of the 12th Parliament, in which he declared 2025 as a year of transformation to the promised land. In his speech, His Majesty urged the government to improve service delivery in key areas, including the healthcare, education, employment creation, science and technology, as well as taking care of the elderly and the youth. This call was a response to the Nkwe commitment to address submissions made by the public during the Sibaya People's Parliament. Honorable Minister, it is unfortunate that post-tabling of the budget, we have seen a significant deterioration in external relations, particularly the reintroduction of tariff barriers in trade by the USA and withdrawal of external donor assistance. The latter in particular will magnify public health challenges with closures of non-governmental organizations in the health space and a squeeze in supporting funding for the government in its health programs. Lamentably, these changes come with increased job losses, adding to the pool of unemployment and straining the economy further on social challenges. Consequently, the government will need to address a substantial funding gap created by these external factors to ensure the continuity of essential services for the people of Emaswati. Conversely, these challenges, Honorable Minister, I believe, galvanize Eswatini and Africa as a whole to seize transformative opportunities. They compel us to strategically diversify our partnerships, aggressively bolster domestic capacity, and champion a more decisive role in leading in regional leadership. This juncture underscores the critical necessity for agile strategic planning and fortified resilience in navigating the complexities of an ever-evolving global landscape. Program Director, it is also opportune for me and all of us here today to congratulate the Minister of Finance for his continued commitment to fiscal prudence, which has been recognized by the Moody's Credit Rating Agency with an upgrade of Eswatini's economic credit rating from B3 to B2. This improvement is a testament to the government's ongoing efforts to make Eswatini a risk-free investment destination. I would like also to congratulate the government on the monumental launch of the first external sovereign bond, which was registered on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. This was truly a historic event for the country as it marked the issuance of its first international bond program. Ladies and gentlemen, I am requesting you to be honest today as we engage in discussions. Let us be constructive in our deliberations, as this will ensure that the ministry receives sound advice on how to effectively implement the presented budget. As part of the bank's responsibility to offer advice to government, I wish to assure you, Honorable Minister, that we stand ready to provide the necessary support and guidance to your ministry. With these remarks, I thank you all, and I hope I am correct, Program Director, that I hereby invite the Honorable Minister to give us his keynote address. Thank you, and good morning. You can do better than that. Please clap much for me. Thank you for the portion and your portion. It's levels, you know.
so very much, Governor, for the kind words. Thank you, Program Director. Again, all the protocols in the room, Governor, Deputy Governor, we have Member of Parliament, or members of Parliament here, but especially the Chairman of our Finance Portfolio Committee, Nathi Business Eswatini. I'm not so sure what to call him, Vusulelo. He's chairman of so many things and CEOs of different things. It's like but I'm presuming he's here as the chairman of the banks, I suppose. Is that the situation? There we go. Okay, right. So chairman of Banking Association. Welcome to you this morning. All the different partners in the room, those that are from the different entities, private sector, parastatals, NGO representations that we have in the room here. Ministry officials from the Ministry of Finance, really, thank you all for coming here. I really enjoy this. I know sometimes I take a bit of a beating in these processes, but one has a time to really kind of speak from the heart, and I don't have a prepared speech. We just kind of talk about where we are, what we're at, and get advice on where we're going forward. So just to thank everyone for that and appreciate that. So I'll start off just by, first of all, what I find more and more is that there's the critical understanding of preparing a budget. A budget, because the thing is that as you now take the budget through the processes, I'm constantly getting advice to say, Minister, you should put more money here. Minister, you must put more money here. Minister, put more money here. This one hasn't got enough money. How do you expect this one to do? What I can announce up front is to say we don't have enough money for being able to spend what we need to spend money on in the country. And I think if we had 5 times the budget, and I think most countries are in very similar positions, except maybe very wealthy countries, but where there just really isn't enough, to go around and do what you need to do. So a budget is really about getting the right balance, is to say, with the resources that you have, is this the right expenditure? Is this the right balance? Have you put enough here? And again, I'm not going to say we get it right. So any advice that we can give, any direction to say, Minister, you know what, you're possibly putting too much here. If we focus over here, we can get it right. And hence, but at the same time, I think one must always keep into consideration, where are we trying to aim as government? And I think, and that's why I think the theme is quite correct, to say transformation for growth is that you'll see that the budget is really trying and get growth right. Why? Not because we want growth. We've got 2 main problems in our country. The first problem being poverty, the second problem being unemployment. These are the 2 huge problems we are trying to deal with. Now, we can put no budget for growth, and we could put all the budget for, let's call it social expenditure, to say, let us just increase social expenditure, try and help those poor. We're going to remain, if we do that, we'll remain right where we are with very limited resources and purely try and take care of the most needy. Hence, but what can climb us out of this hole? And I call that, if we do that, it's kind of moving deck chairs around in the Titanic, because you're not coming out of the solution in the medium nor long term. Whereas if you have growth gives us that exactly what we need to be able to provide jobs. When you have growth, you give people better jobs. People that have jobs can get better jobs and get paid more. And those that don't have jobs get jobs. And when you give people jobs, you come out of poverty naturally. So what I'm saying is that obviously there's still the social spend. There's still, in this year, you would have seen a little bit of increase in the elderly grant, for instance. But the real direction of the budget is to try to say, let us get growth right. And at the same time, as I talk, you'll see that I think it is starting to work as well. So I do see the slides here, and I wonder whether one should... I suppose let the slides play. Let me speak a bit. At some point, we'll come back. I'll ask you to start from the beginning and just walk through the slides, maybe, if we can. Right, so I'll start with some milestones, which have been touched by, the Governor has touched on some of the milestones. And again, if you talk about success in the milestones, because there are some successes, and we're very proud of the successes. But at the same time, I must confess, if anyone is saying it's a Minister of Finance, you got it absolutely wrong. It really is, it's an absolute team effort here. You know what I mean? And it's really, many people are in the room that actually get this right. If it wasn't for the central bank doing what they're doing, forget about what we're trying to get right here. It really, if it's not for the team at the Ministry of Finance, strong team that really makes sure that we keep feet to fire, get it right. And sometimes they say things and we don't get it right politically. What I've been trying to do is trying to say what the team is saying and try and get trying to get it right politically. Because doing the right thing, sometimes it's just politically very difficult to do. And getting that balance right, and just to commend them. If it wasn't for Parliament that really steps up, sometimes people say, your Minister, you've got such a good relationship with your chairman of the Portfolio Committee. It's only because we're both trying to do the right thing for the country. It's because interests are aligned. We're saying we want the best for the Emaswati people out there. And hence, we have a good relationship with our committee, we have a good relationship with the Parliament, and we really, I believe, taking things forward because we all are trying to do the best for the man on the ground, for the poorest of the poor. And so I believe that, and again, Business Eswatini, if it wasn't for this relationship that we have with the private sector, at the moment the growth is not coming from the government expenditure. If it was, we're in a very sad state. The growth is coming from the private sector. It's the confidence that the private sector has in our economy. And other economies that have this kind of growth, it's often from FDI. We do have a bit of FDI, but that's not what's creating the growth. It's the private companies in Eswatini that are all going through expansions and all going through growth at the moment. It's their confidence in our economy saying, we feel like in Eswatini, if we can push investments into here, and a lot of these companies have external shareholders. It's those shareholders looking at sometimes many countries and to say we can invest in many countries, but where, and often the decision comes down to where are we going to get our money back from in 10 years' time, 15 years' time? Which countries, because you can have if there's a country in the continent, you can have a huge amount of currency in that country's currency. You can make fantastic profits in that country. But if you can't take that money out of the country, if you can't convert it back to US dollars, these multilaterals are saying, what's the point of making that profit? So that's where Eswatini is starting to stick our head out, and we're starting to say, because of the sustainability that our fiscus is in, because we've got ourselves onto a sustainable path, these multilaterals are saying, Eswatini is a good place to invest, and we're finding that growth taking place in our economy. So again, just to thank Business Eswatini, the banks always being there for us, the health in the banks, liquidity in the banks, and I can kind of go around the room. But the bottom line is this is an absolute team effort, everybody. It really isn't it's a one-man show or anything like that. Milestones. So I'll just start on some at the moment, our growth, and I'll go quickly, but we have in 2023, 5% growth, higher than the region. 2024, 4.8% growth, higher than the region. 2025, our statistics team, which is normally quite conservative on our growth projections, are saying that it's going to be 8.3%. So let's take us down slightly. 8.3%. So we really are entering, as a country, we are entering a new era of growth. When we have hit growth like this in the past as a country, it was because of some external dynamic. In fact, the last time we hit it was during the pre-1994, when there was sanctions on South Africa, and there was a lot of sanction busting taking place. If we must be honest, it was a lot of that, because the moment South Africa got their act together and came out of sanctions and stopped the apartheid regime, you find a lot of the investments either went back or even moved to South Africa. So but with the growth we're having now, it's from no funny external situation. It really is because I believe we are starting to do the right thing as a country, and we're being rewarded by the private sector for that. Economic performance translated into increased expenditure. So the year that we are in, we managed to, again, even though SACU receipts came down with 2.6 billion, we managed to increase expenditure with about 11% and still maintain our 40.5% debt to GDP ratio. Now again, this can move, but that is our red hot focus point. If there's one indicator we focus on at the Ministry of Finance, it's our debt to GDP ratio. So the more we can get the GDP up, the more loans we can take. We've got no problem with debt. We can take on debt. But as long as our ratio, our debt to GDP ratio remains right, means that you can afford at whatever point to repay your debt. So hence, if we're getting our growth right, it means we can take on loans. This year we are taking on more loans. I'm coming to Parliament with a decent amount of loans this year. And it's because we can actually handle it because of our growth that we have been getting and the growth that we are in. And we are hoping to keep that around. I mean, we peaked at just below 45%, I think around 2022, 2023. But we hope to keep it around the levels that we are now. But again, because of certain dynamics, you don't have all the controls in your hand. Even if we pick, as long as at the moment the focus is remain below 45%. If we can keep it around 41, hallelujah, which our budget is speaking to, But the fact of the matter is, even below 45 is really healthy territory. And so, and again, sorry, I know maybe deviating even now and again, but people ask, Minister, but why 45? There's other countries, even in SADC says keep it below 60%. We do need to understand, Maswati, that we do have a risk with SACU. At the moment, SACU is healthy, SACU is fine, there's something, but if one day SACU ends, we do need to have headroom to live through that process. So, and that's why we have to keep our debt to GDP below 45%, so that if one day SACU stops, it means that we can now take our debt to 60%, and in that period, do what we need to do to realign to the new normal and actually keep the wheels turning and do what we can do. So hence, 45% is critical for Eswatini that we don't go over that, so that we can keep that buffer there in case one day we get into the trouble, which I sincerely hope we don't ever get to. Or if we do, that it's after my term as a Minister of Finance. No, I'm joking. I'm a citizen before I'm a minister, so I really hope we don't. But at the same time, that's the reason why we try and do what we do there. Again, we spent some time there. What a breakthrough for this country. We qualified for IDA funding. So IDA funding is a special funding window from the World Bank, which is very concessional. And there are 3 countries this last year that there were small kind of landlocked countries like ours, certain economies like ours, where we have high poverty and high unemployment, but at the same time a middle income country. And sorry, I'm still trying to get this right. It really is a bit reverberating. And so for that reason, we do believe that we. It really was a breakthrough to be able to qualify for IDA funding. This is going to mean that our cost, the Moody's upgrade, what the Governor spoke about, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, stabilization fund. Everyone, honestly, if it wasn't for the stabilization fund, we would be in a very, very different situation in this budget. This budget would be, I'll be having a terrible time this morning talking about this budget, because this budget would have had to be, I would have had to gone backwards. We would have been talking about a possible, if we were lucky, keeping the budget the same as last year, if it wasn't for the stabilization fund. So the stabilization fund, obviously when we have higher SACU receipts, we give it a haircut, we take money out of it, we put it into a fund. There's currently about 2.5 billion sitting in the stabilization fund, managed by the central bank, again helping a bit with reserves. But and now the year that we are in, when SACU drops, we're taking out 1 billion from that, leaving 1.5. Probably grow the bit of interest again, maybe get to 1.6, 1.7 by the time we get to this time next year, and we'll see what next year looks like. Next year probably will be slightly down again. We don't think as much as this year, probably slightly down, take something out. And the following year, according to the normal SACU cycle, the following year we're probably again taking money out of it and putting back into the fund again. So that's how this fund works. People say, Minister, oh, it's like a fuel tank, it's like a reserve tank. It's not. It's a shock absorber. It's all the SACU is a shock absorber. It just that means when a bump comes, you go over the bump, you stay level. When a pothole comes, the car stays level. It is really what this stabilization fund is for, and it's working very well. We ambitiously going to start a sovereign wealth fund. We believe it can have a big impact in the country. We have many Category B shares and Category B entities, and we're going to lump them all into a sovereign wealth fund. A lot of our assets that we have as a country, which are just non-performing, put them in a sovereign wealth fund, and we believe in that space. It can really help to try and grow us. ERS, I don't know if ERS is in the room today. Anyone here? ERS, I'm not so sure. But we do have, ERS is really doing well, team. They are really a high-performing parastatal. And lucky for me, they're under the Ministry of Finance. But they are, they're doing very well. And again, they are increasing our tax with 2 billion emalangeni this year without us having to increase taxes. Other countries are constantly trying to see what they can do to increase. We're trying not to, and that's a space we're in. Otherwise, then I think I'll touch on tax quickly. So obviously, we have seen the 40 cents on fuel. This was done, in fact, in the previous term. It was agreed. The 40 cents on fuel will come, and it is absolutely directly going to be going towards road maintenance. We believe it will really fill a certain space there. That'll be a good place. It's instead of the 1st of March that I mentioned in the speech, it's now the 1st of April. And then VAT. So VAT, we are not planning on raising VAT as Eswatini. But if South Africa raises VAT, everyone in the room, unfortunately, we have to follow suit. To have different VAT regimes across the border is an absolute nightmare. And so unfortunately, if South Africa raises VAT, which it doesn't seem like they're going to be doing, but just that everyone understands, if they do, we have to follow suit as a country, more just for practical reasons. Other things that we are trying to tackle. In fact, let me start on problems that we have. So problem areas in Eswatini. We have at the moment we have certain projects that are overspending, and like the ICC. It is a problem. At the moment, we desperately need to finish our international conference center. It's going to have a huge boost to the economy, but we are battling to get it wound up. I promised everyone last year we got a 1.1 billion the year that we are to finish the ICC. You know, we hear again, okay, we need another certain amount of money to finish the ICC. So as a government, we really are. We're going to do our best now to try and get this thing done. But again, I always like just putting our problems on the table. It is a problem. We're dealing with it, and we're trying our best to sort it out. Corruption, something we keep on talking about, but at the same time, we're now doing a whole lot of reshuffling over there, moving police officers into ACC, and there's a lot of action taking place within the ACC and a lot of movement and investigations. But I know everyone says, Minister, we don't care about all that. We want to see convictions. And as a government, we do believe that there will be in this year coming, there should be a lot of movement that will be taking place there. Service delivery is still not great, everyone. What I'm saying is, so at the moment, we really do need to up our game in service delivery. A solution to this is not necessarily fixing more bums on seats or trying to sort out in that sense. It is digitizing. So the more we can digitize this, and we are on a strong digitization path, the more we can digitize our processes, the whole lot better we're going to be, so that we can be able to do whatever we need to do from government in your hands, like the Minister ICT is speaking about. And that is the path, that is the route. We are on track for that, and we believe we're going to solve a lot of our service delivery issues by being able to do a lot of services in that space. At the same time, you can say, Minister, it all sounds great, but it doesn't mean if someone is sick, you can solve it with a government in your hand problem. At the moment there's a lot of physical things we need to get right. And our Ministry of Health, in many aspects, are doing very well. Unfortunately, on the biggest element of giving people medicines, they are not doing well. And so at the moment, we are very strongly moving towards privatizing CMS, because even though there's budget, there's a huge amount of pills that get delivered to our central medical stores, people are still not getting the pills at the end of the day. So, and at the same time, tens of millions of pills are expiring. In fact, there's a warehouse full of expired drugs. And at the moment, you said we're getting something very wrong in that process. So we're privatizing CMS, where it's actually, and there's a whole team. Global Fund is giving us lovely support there. The Ministry of Health is working hard on it, and we really believe in quite a short space of time, in this year coming, we should have it fully. In fact, the legislation is being finalized now to be able to make it a parastatal. And even though we're trying to reduce parastatals, this is one that we believe is going to make a huge transformation. And they will control medicines from beginning to end until it lands in someone's. And only when it lands in someone's hand do they invoice government to pay them. So if they don't deliver medicines into people's hands, they don't get money. It's a very clever system that's worked out, and they have all the tools they need to be able to get that right. The pause on USAID funding is another issue we're dealing with. We are fortunate as a country. Some countries have had the funding cut off 100%. In Eswatini, that is not the case. They are still continuing to fund certain life-saving elements of the support that they're giving. We can some look up and say, "Thank you, Lord," just for the total funding is not cut off. Where the funding does seem to be cutting off, we'll be assessing it all as government and to see, do we need to possibly step in certain places? We can't step in everywhere, but at the same time, we'll see what we can get in and support with as government. When it's very clear what is not getting funded and what is. Those are slight negatives. This coming year, there'll be quite a few loans coming. At the moment, just in our political cycle, if one can put it that way, 2023, 2024, I don't think it was when, obviously, there was a change of parliament. We went through our election process. I don't think I even brought loans that year. I can't remember. If there's one or two small ones, it might have been the case. Last year, I brought two small loans. I think there's a small EFAD one and a small OPEC one, which we passed as parliament. But in our cycle this year, I can prepare yourself. Honourable Khumalo is going to look thinner by the time the year's finished from all the running with the loan bills that we'll be bringing to Parliament. But this is the year that we now bring probably quite a few loans. All our projects we're planning, all the implementation plans are all now in the process of getting through, and there'll be quite a few loans coming through. We really believe that if the loans that we are working on are all approved, that we will be able to sort out arrears. The plan is to have arrears to be a thing of the past once and for all by April, May in 2025. And so that is the goal, that is the ambition, and we really believe that we can do that. We have been managed to reduce arrears, so arrears have come down from 6 billion to kind of lumbers between 1 and 2 billion Emalangeni at the moment. But, and we managed to do that through budget expenditure, just not spending all the budget. And we were hoping to get it down to zero. As a Ministry of Finance, unfortunately, the previous year, we actually went over the budget slightly because of interest payments that we didn't expect. The year that we're in, we kind of on target, but we don't have the space to be able to sort out arrears anymore. So we have to now loan money for the last chunk of arrears, pay it, get it behind us, and deal with it. It is debt, honourables. It's not like we're going for more, I'll say honourables, sorry, to everyone here, because I'm too used to speaking in Parliament these days. We have some honourables, but not everyone is necessarily honourable in a certain sense, but maybe not as a title. But we really believe that these loans will be able to give us the solution that we need to come out of this properly. As a Ministry of Finance, we've got five. Let me call it for the rest of my term. The Ministry of Finance obviously will have lots of ambitions after my term, but I've got 5 main ambitions in my term, and as a team, we've all fully aligned. We're putting in IFMIS, Integrated Financial Management System, which is like SAP or whatever for government. It's putting in a strong system so that, and paperwork becomes a thing of the past. It now becomes a digital process from beginning or from budget process all the way through until you get payment. There's no more big files and tender packs and all this nonsense that happens in government. It's brilliant, and it's going to transform theoretically the Auditor General will have to start thinking, what's he going to do from morning to night? Because he's not going to have that much to audit anymore like he has at the moment. Procurement is the next big one. We're busy working on the legislation right now for procurement, change procurement legislation, but also go to e-procurement. So procurement is no longer, again, something running around. It's a digital process. Once you're on the system, you're on. Anyway, it's a very clever procurement system. We're moving from our accounting system, from being a cash accounting system to an accrual accounting system, which is going to give us phenomenal insight from beginning right through to the end. We believe it's going to be transformative, and we're busy with it right now. We've already engaged all the consultants. We're working on it as we speak. Sorting out arrears is the next one, which I was touching on earlier as a critical one, and then SOE reforms. We still do plan to do SOE reforms, maybe not exactly according to what we looked at before. We're starting with changing the PEU legislation. We're working on that now. PEU legislation will be changed in a matter of about 6 months or so, and then we're going to start working hard on SOE reforms. Doing SOE reforms before the PEU legislation would have been very difficult, so we're making the legislation so that you can do PE reforms easily. So that's what finance is doing. Obviously, other ministries have all got their own things, but in our next term, this is really what we try and put. In fact, for me as a minister, if we get these 5 things done, I feel I would really have managed to have leave the ministry in a good place by the time I go home. In fact, maybe we touch on the slides. I think let's quickly, I don't know if someone is in control of the slides, let's maybe just go through the slides here just to touch on 1 or 2 things that we have been looking at here. They were running quite nicely at some point, but I thought maybe just talk to them, and I'll end with that. We can't make the slides play. We've got lots of computers back there, Governor. Lots of computers, lots of screens, lots of experts. You're right, yeah. Oh, there we go. Right, okay. So let's start with this one. Hold on, transformation for growth. So what do we have here? This is the fiscal deficit, and so at the moment one can see where we are as a government. So at the year that we are still in, 2024-2025, we're talking of 1.8 billion Emalangeni as a fiscal deficit, moving to 2.8 billion in the year to come. At the total expenditure. So the revenue and grants, one can see where that is. We managed to close the gap. At the moment, we come from a very high gap in our fiscal deficit. We managed to close that gap. At the moment, that gap is such that if our growth remains what it is, it means our debt to GDP remains the same. We can jump to the next slide. Right, I had to find out from Skumbuzo this morning. Skumbuzo, what does primary balance mean? And he had to explain to me, Minister, what the primary balance is. So just to say, your minister doesn't necessarily know all the different terms. Fiscal deficit, though, is the one that we focus on. So as you can see, the fiscal deficit from previous years was even slightly higher before this. We come from around even 7.5% fiscal deficit territory. Fiscal deficit, now again, this is the gap between the money you're spending and the money that you have. And if that gap is too big, it means you're taking on a whole lot more debt every year, and your debt is just ballooning. Whereas your fiscal deficit comes down to where we are now. In fact, where we are now is what you call sustainable territory, where it means that the amount of debt you're taking on compared to GDP, it now means your debt to GDP is remaining flat. In 2023, 2024, we managed to bring it down to actually 0.3%. 2024, 2025, it came to about 2%. 2025, 2026, it's about 3%. So obviously 3% again is healthy because we got the 8% growth. 2% is healthy when you got 5% growth. It's a ratio, and they move together. A primary balance just means if you take the interest off the fiscal deficit, what's the primary balance? In other words, what's the core debt that you're taking on if you exclude the interest? Next slide. We're thinking about it. Right, here we go. So this one over here, one can now see what our revenue breakdown is. Oh, hold on, we're moving on too quick. I don't know, shall we go back to that one, or shall we? I think the team did plan to have it rolling while I was talking, Governor. I'm not so sure they planned for me to speak to the slides. So before you're getting upset with anybody in the back there, I think I'm messing with the program here, I think. Okay, so we're talking about revenue breakdown, and so as you can see where we come from, I'm not so sure if it's clear there, whether it's a bit fuzzy, but our SACU receipts, you can see that the years that we come from, SACU receipts was taking a bigger portion. SACU receipts amounts is like now that we have the stabilization fund in place, SACU receipts should actually now slowly but surely that dark green one in the middle should actually go down slightly over the years. As our own revenues grow, as our taxes grow, we're hoping to try and get that down, even though, again, it's a juxtaposition. We are trying to do everything we can to try and increase our share of SACU receipts, but at the same time make sure that on our domestic front, we are still trying to make sure that our own revenue collection is actually the main point of getting business. But that does not mean that if we can do some smart things to try and increase our share of SACU, that we don't do those. And getting that balance right is what we really try and focus on as a ministry. For instance, if we want to produce power in the country, we say, well, we're going to reduce. If we buy 1 billion Emelangenis less power from South Africa, it means it's going to drop SACU receipts with a 300 million, more or less, if one just does the rough numbers. But on that front, there's no ways you say, well, let's not produce power in the country. Producing power in the country is going to produce the jobs, the revenues, the turnovers, the sustainability. In that front, you say, forget about SACU receipts. We absolutely need to do power. We need to produce electricity as much as what we can. But when it comes to importing fuel, for instance, if you're importing fuel from this side or that side, rather import from South Africa, where it's going to increase your SACU receipts, or second-hand cars. But when it comes to doing stuff in the country, that will take priority above SACU receipts. So it's getting that balance right and getting the pitch right, and I think we're getting it right at the moment, really doing our best there. Otherwise, you see the tax elements going up, like I say, even with us reducing corporate tax. And again, that was an interesting one. People thought when I spoke about bringing the corporate tax rate down from 27.5%, 25%, you can see the minister, he's doing it for his own benefit. He's got a company in the country, that's the reason why. But one can see in the numbers this year, because what we have is, if we can have the lowest tax jurisdiction in the region, most of our big players in the country are regional players. They're not just in Eswatini. And it means that if they can, if we've got a lower tax, they're going to try and declare more profits in Eswatini. So with us having reduced the rate this year from 27.5% to 25%, ERS is saying that they're collecting 23% more company tax than they did the previous year. All the other taxes are 7%, 8%, whatever the case is. Company tax, 23% more. So it's proving what we felt when we did this change was, if we had to reduce it, it means that more profits get declared here. People have got no problem declaring profits, and it's actually giving us lovely results from doing that. In fact, if we can even, there's a strategy there's a thinking to say, even if you go down more, the more you go down, the more you get, because we are a small country in a bigger region. That dynamic there. It's different for a big country in a region, but a small country in a region is a thinking, which we're busy researching and we'll have a look at. Right, next slide. Let's see what else we have here. Again, obviously one can see the other ones. Right, this is expenditure breakdown. So what are we spending money on? Let's see. We have, unfortunately, it's really not clear from over here. Employees. I think let's look at, I think the wage bill. is a big one. At the moment, we have, if you look at the different years, in fact, if you go back, our wage bill is something which in 2018, let me use 2018 as an example, we were the second worst in the world on our wage bill to expenditure ratio. So which means our wage bill, in fact, Lesotho was the worst. we were just behind Lesotho. Lesotho was 43% of their expenditure was in, and ours was 42%, was our expenditure, our wage bill to expenditure percentage. Since 2018, with the freeze on hiring and different things that we've done, and you'll see this year also there's grumbling, Minister, you should have put more for the salary review exercise. But at the same time, the problem on this dynamic, as much as our civil servants are a critical part of our family in the country, one does unfortunately need to look at the family dynamics. If one is sitting around the dinner table and one child is getting a small little bit in its plate and it's a skinny child, and the other child is looking nice and healthy and is getting a plate full, you know, you need to say to yourself, you need to get that balance right. It's not to say one child's more important than the other, but the balance is important so that you actually do have things spread around. So over the last 6 years, let's just say, we've managed to bring it from a 42% down to a 32% wage bill to expenditure. It's a critical move, and we managed to do that without a terrible knee-jerk reaction. Because the World, World Bank, but the advice that we were getting, I think from the IMF actually, was to say, Minister, you must go through a massive retrenchment exercise, go through an EVIS. In Eswatini, an exercise like that, it'll be devastating. It'll have the social impacts of going through a harsh retrenchment process through government. Would have been catastrophic. It would have caused untold problems. We couldn't do that. But by us just being tight, by us being really trying to make sure that vacant positions are filled with people that are not needed somewhere else and move people around and doing it as best we can, we managed to get that ratio right. But otherwise, goods and services, interest, you'll see the interest number, it peaked in 2023, 2024, around 9%, just because of inflation going up and repo rates going up to try and curb inflation. It's coming down. Now, we hope to see that number continue to go down because unfortunately, it has come from lower amounts. Transfers, but the bottom line is CapEx. If you can see, when I talk of growth, that CapEx, that brown, reddish one on the end there, is really what we're trying to do. You will see as the years go by, we're increasing the percentage of money we spend on capital expenditure. Capital is going to give us the growth that we need. So when we're talking of transformation for growth, we're not just saying it because it's a nice thing to say, we're doing it. And there's the proof of what we are doing on that front. Are there any more slides? I'm not so sure. I think might still be one or two. Okay, this is to show the debt stock. So at the moment, our debt does continue to increase. Like I say, around 2022, 2023 is when we managed to, 2021-22 is when we managed to actually get our debt to be on more sustainable path. Where we come from was an unsustainable path. Where we are now is a sustainable path. Again, obviously, if we get the growth right. And so even though the debt is increasing, we don't believe we're in any kind of danger territory with our debt ratios. Next slides, if you have any. This is a lot of numbers here. Let's just say government expenditure, classification and functions of government. Yes, so this just gives us a breakdown of where the expenditure is taking place. As you will see, it really is education and health that takes a large share of it. Again, economic affairs, that is really much on the growth front. You know what I mean, where we're trying to spend money on growth. But this gives an idea. General public services is around the 30% of the total. Otherwise, I think it's good. I think I've really taken too much time, Governor, of the time here. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
See the challenges that one faces when he's speaking after the minister, but that's fine. Can I request the team to assist me quickly to set up for the panel? Whilst they're setting up, there will be the same slides will be playing as a video, so please just enjoy the slides whilst the team brings up the other equipment.
Program Director. I think this was an amazing presentation by the Honorable Minister. I just want to make a quick highlight, Minister. I just like how you are so authentic and so practical, so realistic and transparent. You know, we are living at a time where, you know, leaders don't come too clear. And I really like, and your simplicity and your clarity. And we want to really, really, truly appreciate. The nation is blessed to have you as our minister in this time. Let's give God, let's just give a big hand of applause. You could tell the pastor in me came very, very quickly there. Honorable Minister, thank you. Before I call you to come to the podium, let me do some what to call it, advertisement or commercial. Now that we have our honorable MPs, especially the chairman of the portfolio committee, I see that the CEO of FSRA is here, the governor is here, the deputy governor is here, the executive of the central bank are here. I would like to say, Honorable Minister, chairman of the portfolio committee, both entities have some pieces of legislation that are coming to you. We humbly request that these be attended to in 2025. Please. They are long overdue, especially in our space. The financial stability one is so crucial. The issue of climate change, greening the economy, digitization. We're still carrying a law of 1974. You can imagine in this day and age. And the whole integrated regulatory landscape. In the FSRA, we can see the bleeding that is happening. So I hope you pay me some fees for promoting your institution, Mr. CEO. So thank you very much, honorable MPs. It is a desperate situation. As the minister was talking about SOEs and reforming the SOEs and the PU, we just need to do right what is just available. And to have the right legislation will really accelerate. And thank you very much. Honorable Minister, with those, that commercial, may I humbly request you to take the seat on my immediate left. Let's give a big hand as the minister comes. We would like, I hope those that are joining us online, they can see the panel. If you don't see me, don't worry. Please try and see the panelists. Those are the people that will be taking center stage in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Program Director, we have a very high-level panel, which I spoke about in my introductory remarks. We have got the CEO of Business Eswatini, Mr. Inati. May I request you to take the stage, sir. Thank you. Give him a big hand of applause. May I request the CEO, Executive Director of Congo, the representative, Ms. Ndipiwe Shabangu. Ms. Ndipiwe Shabangu. Is she here? Mr. Oh, Mr. Ndipiwe Shabangu. The name sounds like a female name, but it is. Thank you, Mr. Shabangu. We welcome you. Please, Shabangu, sit next to Inati. You can see the boss knows what he wants. Just follow the rules. The chairman of the Finance Portfolio Committee in the House of Assembly, Honorable Maui Kumalo. Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate you. Can you give a big hand of applause for this man? You know, they are unsung heroes, and this man has stood the test of time. And we are very, very appreciative, Mawik. You know, you've been in this portfolio. Look what the country has gone. And I like your authenticity, your truthfulness, and your resilience. And not because I want you to approve the bills, but and you know me, I say it as it is, and I don't bluff you. Thank you very much, Mawiki, and we truly appreciate. May we have our economist, independent economist, Mr. Teminkosi Dube, and he must declare that he's a former central bank. Thank you very much, Mr. Dube. Good to see you. Well done. We appreciate you. And then lastly, but certainly not the least, we welcome the World Bank country economist, Mr. Marco Kwaramba. So ladies and gentlemen, program director, I want to assure you as a panelist, and thank you, by the way, for all of you for coming. We are getting into the dialogue stage. I thought I'm still chairing this. Figile, you can tell me if you want to take over. Lest I send a letter show cause within 7 days. Thank you very much. Honestly, thank you for taking the time, for being here. Thank you so much to our panelists. I am going to restrict you in your reflections. The minister has given a very eloquent, very clear presentation in a very pragmatic way, not in the manner to be at the House of Assembly or even at Senate. And I think we actually, aggregated it and in a granular level for our consumption and deliberation. So at this point, I would like to ask you, Nati, just to reflect from a business and private sector perspective, what the budget means to the private sector. Is it scratching where it is itching? Is it truly a growth-driven budget? And how do you assist the minister? Thank you. You have got 3 minutes of reflection. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Governor, for the time. I think the question to ask first is this. If it were you, what would you have done differently in this budget? I think that's very, very important. If it were you, what would you have done differently? Knowing what you know about this country and its oddities, obviously, and understanding the complexity of the environment, political, economic, social, and otherwise, against which this budget was created. And then appreciating the not so obvious constraints underpinning the budgeting process itself. And given all of that, what is it that you would have done differently? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a very sobering thought. Before we could ask these questions, before many years at BE, were able to come up with a critique of 20 pages. But until we made it personal, say, if it were you, what would you do? We ended up coming up 1-page critique. So that's the first one. The second area which I want to touch upon is that in his own words, the Honourable Minister stated that this is a pro-growth budget, meaning that he will invest in national resources in sectors and areas that propel growth. I think that's a good thing. But he also mentioned in other areas that he wants to achieve a huge multiplier effect on those sectors to propel that growth to those projections that he has. He goes on to mention some of these projects like renewable energy and others that he thinks will help him to get the ball over the line, as it were. And I can confirm that, generally speaking, the private sector is not diametrically opposed to what the minister is saying. In fact, they are quite supportive, as it were. The third point I'd like to make is this. The minister has made very, very bold GDP projections for this fiscal year, a whopping 8.3%. Yes, it did. He based his projections on major pipeline projects that should come on stream during this fiscal year. But he also banked on the existing environment remaining generally unchanged. I think economists always call it ceteris paribus, as it were. However, we all know that the post-budget environment, this time in which we are speaking, the environment is dramatically shifted almost overnight, and due in large part to the geopolitical and geo-economical uncertainties around the region and the world, indeed, that have suddenly emerged, which sadly, I can add, will most likely serve to undermine the minister's budget aspirations, especially on the expenditure side of things. But whether or not he'll need to revise the budget at some point is a debatable proposition. But what's not debatable is that we need to find ingenious ways to mitigate these potential risks. The fourth point, and next to my last one, is the private sector credit extension and economic growth. The budget speech highlights a slowdown in private sector credit extension, with growth decelerating from 2% in 2023 to 8.8% just last year. It's a nominal decrease, obviously, but one which we think is significant in terms of observing it. And given that the private sector credit is a key driver of economic growth, the Minister of Finance may want to think of measures to put in place to ensure that businesses, especially SMEs, have access to affordable credit. And I say knowing that all of this, by the way, is a huge ask. Another thing I want to point out lastly, and then we can discuss it later, is the tax reforms and competitiveness. I think the minister has touched upon the points I was going to mention there, why he has configured the taxes the way he has. And I think the private sector is equally aligned to those views. The last point I want to make is the public-private partnerships. Minister, there's so much scope and opportunity there. But as long as government repents and saying we can go into partnership and I will always pay on time, all the time, then I think there's something there. But until maybe government repents fully in terms of settling areas on time, all the time, it may be a very, very hard slog going forward. For now, that's my opening salvo, ladies and gentlemen. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nat. Let's give him a big hand. Thank you for that reflection. I take leave on the fact that you see it to be pro-growth and you are supportive of that. And I think you are reflecting, I think it's a very, very crucial reflection, Honourable Minister. You spoke quite strongly that your debt is hinging on growth. And are we going to see the 8% growth? I think basically that's the fundamental. Are we creating the right enabling environment to achieve that? Is it not too aspirational? Is it not deceiving? Are we aligned? Are we realistic? And I think it's something that you need to reflect on, as he has highlighted. The geo-economic political issues, I think contextually, it's something we must be thinking about it. It's a post-budget issue. How are we dealing with it? I think you did make some reflection. Thank God you said we have not been shut down immediately. Other countries have. But again, we mustn't rest on our laurels. Let's see what to do. Let me hear the independent views here from both Kango, Mr. Shabangu, and Mr. Dube. I would like you to go one after the other. I will not remark in between. I just want you to give a context. As you listen to the minister, and as we heard him today, is it really addressing issues of education? Is it transformational? Is it dealing with the social fiber of our society? Is the nation feeling the budget in their pockets? And how are they responding to this? And do you think the minister is real or is living in a fantasy?
Thank you, Governor, putting me in hot water. I think in terms of education, the allocation to education, which is one of the biggest allocations of the budget, it shows that the budget is transformational. However, we are cognizant that, there are limited resources, There's not enough money for all the budget items, but I think if we could spend more on the capital expenditure of the education budget, which goes to the infrastructure, improving the overall way the education is delivered. I think we focus on quality. I think that would go a long way. And in terms of money, value for money in the pocket, or does it translate to the pocket? Yeah, I think it depends on which aspect, but we are concerned on inflation as Kango and the effect it has on the households. Developments such as electricity hike and water will have an adverse effect on, well, it will have an effect on the income of the households. And we are acknowledging that the focus on STEM competencies and critical skills, which has been identified in the budget, is a very good thing for the education of the country. Of course, we are faced with challenges in the higher education of the country, especially our UNESCO, which has been facing management challenges resulting to protests and the likes. But the task force has delivered the report. We feel like that will maybe go a long way. And also we are the early education of the country. We feel there should be maybe a bit more investment in that. As we know, care points and preschools, I think there can be more investment done in that. But we overall, as the education department, got the biggest, well, one of the biggest allocations. We appreciate that, and also for trying to transform the education of Emaswati to meet the current needs. I think I'll leave it there for now. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Dube. What's your reflection?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back home. It's all started at CBE. Thank you very much. What I can say is about the budget speech. Thank you, Minister, for the wonderful speech and a wonderful budget. But I feel there is a gap from where you are and where the man on the street is. If I can speak in Siswati, in other words, where you are, it's good what you're presenting. But if you go down, there are spaces underneath. People don't necessarily feel the financed budget speech. I will explain why. Maybe the first thing the budget highlights two major problems, which is corruption, talking about unemployment, which is one of the major things. I think it's the first part of the budget speech. But we as Emaswati, we still feel nothing much is done on that. In terms of, we still see the people, we still see the corruption, and we feel it. And I think we need to tackle that. Maybe if we can get one big guy and he be put to task, then we can be happy. The issue of youth unemployment remains a major problem. And you have a wonderful budget speech. The plans that you've put, they are good. But there are young people, as I speak to you, they are in the shops around trying to get themselves busy. They are not doing anything. So I feel the budget has less to do with that. I know what is driving us is to move most of the time to self-employment or entrepreneurship. But there are quite a lot of problems on that for an individual Swati or just a graduate. The fees for application, you try to approach an organization that says it offers loans, the systems, They need you to pay first before you can get the money. So it makes things not workable. There's also the element of the tax system that doesn't provide any incentive to any entrepreneur who is young. If I can give you an example of that, if you start a business, maybe I start a business and I employ about 5 people. Immediately I draw a salary from that business. I'm taxed like these guys who are full-time employed. What's there for me then? The stress of running a business is too much, but there's no benefit for me. Immediately I'm the SRA, ERS says, pay 33%. So we need incentives for those founders of those businesses, if they're legitimate and there's a positive contribution to the economy. And then there's this thing of the tax gap. Maswati don't enjoy that. Even the small entrepreneur has to pay the 25% you're talking about from day one. And nobody actually, one of the problems that I found, immediately you register a company, there's nobody tells you that you have to go to ERS. And immediately ERS comes to you and say you owe money. And there's what they call provisional tax. That kills everything. I think that element has to be dealt with properly because they are not even clear if you ask them what's there. And the problem is that it escalates the interest charges on the defaults, and then it makes it unworkable, and most people have decided to close. Time again, I go to the marketplace. Maybe this is my last point. The marketplace, Lapembaban. It is a concern for me as an economist if I get to the marketplace and I see few crates who are selling with few fruits, and some are closed. Christmas time, you go to town. The problem with us economists, Mr. Minister, is that we don't need you to tell us. We just look at the situation and it tells me what's happening. If I go to town Christmas time, right in Mbabane, there are few cars, 24th of December. It's a sign the economy is sluggish, is suffering. And that's what we're experiencing in the country. That's why I'm saying there's a gap in what you are planning and what is actually happening on the ground. That basically means if the mothers in the marketplace are not busy, it means there is a problem. 10 years ago, you would go to the marketplace, it would be full, you will choose any vegetable. It means there is something that needs to be done. So I think it's a good budget, but at an upper level, it does deal with the man on the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Shabangu and Mr. Dube. I think, Minister, I hope you are taking the notes, and I'll give you time just to reflect. I think there's somebody who needs some first aid here. Please, team, come closer. I just reflecting, you mentioned you are worried about inflation, you are at the right place. That's the space of the central bank. Monetary policy will deal with that. We are keeping an eye on the water. We are keeping an eye on electricity, and you could see our sort of posture in terms of monetary position at this time. This is not for today, but it's good to remind the minister that we are watching what's happening in the wider community and wider society. And the good is the gap. Are we addressing the gap? Marco, you were so bold at the launch of this report a few days ago and actually said government is way above in terms of salary to private sector. Now, can you talk to us? There, I think you were showcasing and trying to score points in front of your bosses. Now, tell us the truth. There are no World Bank CEOs and MDs. You are now with us here. Is this budget sustainable to address your concern?
I will, thank you very much, Governor. Good morning. All protocols observed. When I come here, I didn't want to repeat any message on wages. So, Governor, if I don't repeat it, please know that I have come here not to repeat it. But basically, let me also start by thanking the minister or the Minister of Finance or the whole government in coming up with a great budget. As World Bank or as development partners, we always work with government. Sometimes, actually, I was thinking, should I, before I accepted to be here, I was asking myself, should I be also part of that? Because mostly we know we are also in the kitchen. We have worked with government in various reports. One of it, the governor is referring, that is the public finance review. We have also done the growth strategy. We are working with the central bank on the FSAP or on the financial sector. So we think, we really appreciate that collaboration going forward. We also appreciate the coordination between the fiscal authorities and the monetary authorities. This is actually highly appreciated. However, it's not collaboration, it's coordination, it's not friendship. If there are two friends, please, we don't anticipate the governor and the minister to be friends. Okay, so
we are not. We are not.
So let me start from where the minister ends in terms of the budget. So what we see in the budget is the desire to implement reforms. And these reforms are critical. For example, the reforms on procurement, the reforms on SOEs, IFMIs, these are critical and in the fiscal framework. And remember, fiscal is central to economic development. And the theme of the budget that transformation for growth is actually central to fiscal policy. Let me move to the macro framework or the growth. I don't want to say the growth is not feasible, but as the CEO of business Eswatini said, every day there are emerging risks. So I don't want to repeat the emerging risk, but I want to say, Governor, one of the number that has contributed to 8.3 is the building of the central bank. So if we come here in November and the building is not there, it means we subtract the growth. That's what I can say for this. Let me say in terms of the tax revenue, the budget actually is well aligned even with the public finance review that we have presented, that it's not more, revenue should not be increased by increasing taxes, but by efficiency.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that the Eswatini Revenue Authority has done a great in that. And from the study, we just say mandatory e-filing from your colleagues, Ms. Inat, will actually generate about 1.6 to 3.3% of GDP in revenue. So that is reducing tax revenue. So we are aligned. Of course, the 2 billion that is expected to be generated, I don't know, Minister, I hope the lines that that will be monitored to result in the 2 billion revenue. On the wages, so the wage bill, I will not say, what I will say is that the wage bill pressures need to be managed with great care. It's not only here in Eswatini, it's across all countries. So I think the minister has presented it well, that if you look at 2016, 2017, the wage bill was 14% of GDP. And then it declined since 2019 when they have the hiring freeze. Now we are seeing an increase again. Of course, it's not yet 14, it's around 11% of GDP. This should be monitored. You know, when you increase the wages in any country, there is what we call wage price spiral. So once you increase the wages, especially for civil servants, prices will adjust immediately. And if prices adjust immediately, it means that you are now dealing with the net gain to say, was that huge increase necessary when prices have increased? So which one has increased faster than the other? So mostly, if we know what happened in 2016, 2017, that's when inflation reached 9%, if you check the data. So we hope this salary review will not repeat that. I assume and that, of course, the civil servants, they are highly paid compared to private sector. But I don't want to repeat it. I am not repeating it.
Thank you.
Then also, let me point out the other issue that has been raised by the minister or in the budget is these expenditure areas. You know, if you look at 2017, also 2018, there were huge, big areas, 9%, 8% of GDP. Now it's declining. It has declined, but we are seeing there was a marginal rise in 2024. So these expenditure areas, it dovetails even with what will happen to the wage. If you increase the wage bill too much, it means that obviously there will be little money to pay suppliers. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. So, but the minister, the point here is that paying expenditure areas is good, but closing the tap is the best, is the final solution. You have said it yourself. But how do you close this tap? I think implementing public finance management reforms, IFMIs that you mentioned, then also the accrual, but also sanctions for those government officials or that are not bringing the receipts or the claims in time. So all these will help to deal with expenditure areas. You know, in the bank this week we had the review of the macro, Swatini macro. One of the questions that I was asked is, if expenditure areas are high, may you please tell us what is happening to non-performing loans? It was very hard to defend it, and I hope the governor will defend it.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
okay, so let me conclude by now focusing on social. So the budget did well in terms of focusing on social services, on social sectors and service delivery. The allocations, I will not speak about it, but I will speak about social transfers. So the social transfers has been increased, but what we are saying here is that also the government should continue on the social registry, especially for better targeting. For better targeting. The other one is the priority sectors that have been identified in the budget: agriculture, energy. We have done a growth driver study with the Central Bank, with the Ministry of Economic Planning. It points to these sectors. So obviously it's critical that these sectors receive the greatest attention in the budget. Lastly, let me conclude by thanking also the minister or the budget in mentioning what development partners are doing. From the bank side, the youth project, the budget support, the energy, on UN perspective, the disability fund, African Development Bank, also in water sector. With this, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwaramba. Very good reflections there, Minister. I'm sure you've picked the points that will enrich your implementation of the budget. I would like to wrap it up now with the chairperson of the Finance Portfolio Committee, the Honorable MP Khumalo. You have worked with the minister for many years, and certainly the House has trusted you with this portfolio. And you have executed it exceptionally well, and the nation has been watching. I want you to give me, do you think the minister has stepped up with this budget? Is it dealing with the priority development areas? Do you feel the House is feeling the minister, or the minister is all by himself here and cabinet?
Mr. Governor, thank you so very much for the opportunity and also for the invitation. And also I'd like to start by paying tribute to the minister himself. When he came into Parliament, or maybe to his position as well, I don't want to say he was stumbling, but he would make decisions that he would make amends later, and then we were not so much working like as a team, I must state. He was coming from the private sector, and I've been in the legislature for quite a while. So he was coming with the private sector mentality. But you know, the sentiment that you expressed of the minister earlier, the authenticity, the honesty, the transparency, you know, this is what has got him going. Because I remember at some point we argued on the issue of the Roads Authority, the establishment of the Roads Authority. When I moved a motion in Parliament, he was not for the idea. But later on, he was, after having been in office for a few more years, then he came back to concede to say, you know, Kumar, you were very right. Now I understand that this is essential for the country. Because his view was, let's collect all the money into the consolidated fund and we'll take it out. I said, no, you won't be able to do it because this is government. It's not easy. But having said that, I can say that I would like to pay tribute to His Majesty for reappointing him to this position, because I'm sorry to say, and I know that it has been a collective effort to achieve the things like the Moody's upgrade. But clearly, I am not too sure if the appointment had been directed to someone, or it had been someone appointed as finance minister would have achieved that. Because now there is a sense of stability. The World Bank and all the other partners, including the SACU team and everybody, they are feeling his presence. And he's making a good job. Giant strides is taken. So I think I'd like to pay tribute to him. And of course, not to say that we don't differ. We do differ quite a lot. And we do confide at the same time in each other. Because he's, in politics, you have to be sensitive to some of the decisions. This is a country. This is not just a spaza shop. Some decisions are very sensitive, and you would want to discuss in confidence so that we can see how we cascade around those decisions. So he has done that very well. And I enjoy working with him, I must say. Now, let me say this. On the issue of, and again, let me start by saying, you know, government, the way it's different from my ordinary business or any other industrial entity or bank, is that the economic growth, the gains from the economic growth, you need those gains to pay for the socio-political sector of that country. So you need to balance that. But the problem is, when you tend to have the political, should I say, directives outweighing the economic sense, then it becomes a problem, because you may find yourself getting involved in huge projects that have no economic sense, but they are largely politically derived. Then it creates a problem for the country, because those projects may end up consuming hundreds of millions for this country, without necessarily realizing or without necessarily seeing the light at the end of the tunnel that will get something out of it. I'll give you an example. The minister himself touched on the issue of the ICC. It's a common knowledge that that has been a drain on the country's fiscus, big time. And to what extent are we going to get the gains? At what point? I don't know. And I don't know if anybody does know. Now, there's a new monster that has come up, like Renak. I know the minister is a good man. He would argue, hey, we need the airplane because it's like the road, highway, for economic growth, we need the airplane. Yes, we do. I agree. But is it a good start to buy 2 airplanes that are no less than 15 years old each? Because you are just buying a Dubai that is going to give you problems throughout. Already they have consumed, over 500 million. So those are the things that don't sit well with some of us in the legislature. And these are the political decisions I'm talking about that tends to, impact negatively on the economy. Now, having said that, yes, I'm happy he touched on the issue of the parastatals. And I think I raised the issue again in Parliament recently, and he gave the same answer. I would want to belabor the point, but I'm looking forward to the passage of the legislation pertaining to PEUs, because they can actually be a negative to economic growth. Now, towards my last point, Mr. Governor, we believe as parliamentarians, we believe that government should move fast on the issue of the cannabis legislation. We don't like it when we see Insango going in flames, because we know that it's money lost. It's money lost. But then it points to us again, because we have to champion the amendment of the legislation and the repeal of the legislation that probably mitigate against the darker growth. But we have to do it in a civilized manner, just like the whole world does now. Mr. Governor, my last point, very last point. We are bringing, oh, I'm sorry, no, part of the minister. The minister is bringing the finance bill. Actually, has brought the finance bill to Parliament. Yeah, and the finance bill seeks to increase some of the government services, especially in the transport sector. Our licenses will be renewing driver's licenses now every 5 years, SADC licenses, which is a good thing. But the problem is that we tend to stay for many periods without increasing those fees. And when government decides to do that 5-10 years later, then the citizen complains and says, no, man, you can't be doing this. But we need to have a systematic increase effected of such user fees by the government. Over and above, Mr. Governor, I think this is a good budget. We fully support the budget as Parliament. And we will continue to engage with the the Honourable Minister for and against. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give a big hand of applause for all the panelists? Thank you very much. I think there's been quite a nice variety. I want to appreciate the team at the bank, really for carefully selecting these panelists. You can see it's quite diverse, very ingenious in terms of their approach, their gravitas, and truly, and I want to promise you, Minister, stay ready. You were talking about your term. In my term, you will be coming here as long as I'm still in the central bank to debate your budget. So put it in your diary. You were talking about your term. I'm talking about my own term as well. Thank you very much. And we are getting good feedback, by the way, also on social media. Those that are joining us, we appreciate, Minister. There is a comment that says, thank you for unpacking the budget and make it so simplistic, and more importantly, how we are addressing SMEs and agriculture, and also acknowledging the banks who are playing their part in funding this. So you're doing something good as a nation, because that's where the rubber hits the road, when people feel the budget on the streets. Ladies and gentlemen, now I will ask the Minister to sort of reflect and respond to what the panelists have said, but I also give you an opportunity. We have got Slido, you can see there, just check in and then send your questions. They will start popping up and I'll look at them. I will use my discretion to answer. We still have about 5, 6, 7 minutes before we hand over to the program director who will give us the last phase of our discussion. Minister, whilst you are getting ready, if you have got a question, I will also open the floor. So please write it down, be precise, at least 1 or 2 questions, and then after the minister has reacted. Before you talk, Minister, I want you to, what is Africa grappling with is debt. And you are doing a great job, debt to GDP. And this is commendable. And you made a very strong point that let debt go to capital formation, investment, growth. Of course, you need to deal with the areas. By doing so, actually, you're going to give headroom for growth, so which is very good, Minister. I want you to think about debt servicing. That is the sustainability of the debt. Because other countries are sitting at 97% of GDP, others at 60%, but their income stream, their affordability and capacity is much stronger than us. How are you keeping an eye on debt servicing? I would like you to think about that. You talk about the stabilization fund and you are saying you are going to borrow. You want to borrow, Minister, but you also have money. How do you balance the two? You are going to pay interest this side. You have got your own money. I know from a fiscal balance, from a sustainable path, it could make sense. Have you done your numbers to see whether debt-funded money that is already yours, you have put this aside for purposes of holding the shocks? How is that assisting you? Just to help you think through, Minister, as you are implementing. And the last one, I just want to commend you for highlighting problem areas. Well done there, Minister. Most people, as politicians, we tend to just show the glory picture. And I think Honorable MP has pointed it very, very well. The ICC is a thorn in the flesh. To the nation, to everybody. We must deal with it as a nation. And I like the way you are so practical about it, Minister. And I pray and hope that this is a collective voice in your cabinet, that we deal with these legacy projects that are a drain to the nation. You can respond, Minister.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you to all the panelists. Really, I enjoy these kind of sessions. It's really actually nice for me, because I do often believe, Governor, that we're misunderstood. You know, I mean, as government, and I believe as a Ministry of Finance, sometimes people look on and they say, "Yo, you know, if you did this, and I realize it's because there's not a deeper understanding. So one takes this opportunity to really try and get a better understanding. The more everyone understands the situation, the more when we do things right, they know it's the right thing. And when we do things wrong, quickly, hey, Minister, you know, there's a problem here, from a deeper understanding. So I really appreciate that, and I enjoy the sessions. First of all, from Business Eswatini, from Nati, just in connection with SMEs having access to affordable credit. And again, we need to understand, Governor, there is always that balance. If we are saying we need to open the space for SMEs, there's a balance between SMEs and the cost of finance and NPLs. So I'm saying at the same time, someone is saying, Minister, you know, you've got a problem with your non-performing loans here. And it's a very tricky balance that the banks need to hit, is to try and get that balance right. Because unfortunately with SMEs, if we have the opinion, because someone was saying, you know, an SME should be able to walk into the door, be able to have access to credit. What I'm saying, I started off with a very small business. I was walking up and down the streets of Manzini trying to sell honey at some stage in my life. You know, I mean, it was really the size of my business. I really, and that was, but I didn't dream of going to the bank to go and loan money. What one has to, and unfortunately, a lot of our SMEs today, they think the first step of business is going to a bank. And somehow we're misleading the youth, we're misleading SMEs, we're misleading the private sector in that place. The first step is going into business with what you have in your hands, with whatever you can do. You have to start by doing something. So by the time they come to a bank, the bank's got no problem with being small, but if you want to make shoe polish, show me that you're making shoe polish, that you've got a vendor who's selling you shoe polish for you, and that show me the numbers, show me the history. You've done it for 6 months. Now you come to a bank for a loan. You've actually got something. It's very different. So I think the education in this space is critical for us to get the SME sector right. As a government, we take it absolutely seriously. We're actually working on a very exciting SME agriculture plan, because we believe that we have our biggest asset with hundreds of billions of emalangeni is land in Eswatini that is not used. At the moment, our terraced agriculture land in Eswatini, we don't plow more than half of it every year. I'm talking of the terraced land. Let's not talk about land. Let's talk of the terraced land, the tinsiminje, the fields we're not planting in the country. So what I'm saying is, and why? Because uneconomical. Because we're not getting the economics, not because people don't want to or too stupid or too lazy. It doesn't pay to plant a monocrop at the moment in Eswatini on a small piece of land. You must get a tractor to plow it, tractor to disc, a tractor to plant all the fertilizer. By the time you finish and you've won your half a ton and you must now get it to market, there's nothing left in it for you. So we have to work. We're working very hard behind the scenes, and really the Ministry of Agriculture is doing this, but working closely with us as finance for the funding, because it comes with funding, it comes with integrated farming. But there's very exciting things in the pipeline which we are going to try and focus on here. But when it comes to finance, unfortunately, we need to understand, if we're talking access to finance for SMEs, it is unfortunately expensive funding. So what I'm saying is, but again, an SME who's turning money over monthly, what you're loaning him today, normally he's buying goods, he's selling it this month, and you say, well, you know what, 18% interest is a lot of money. It is. It's a lot of interest for entities. But someone who's turning over the whole amount of money every month, it's 1.5% a month. For 100 emalangeni, you're turning over the 100 emalangeni. You're normally turning it over to make 100%, 50% profit. 1.5% for that month is actually not that high. So if we get our thinking right, when it comes to the cost of funding, if we're trying to say we're going to try and fund SMEs with low cost funding, all we're doing is we're making it impossible. We're making it impossible for them to get money, impossible for the banks to give money, or a very unsustainable fund you're going to try and create. And every year you must take money from the taxpayers to fund an unsustainable fund. Those are the options, and none of them are good options. The right option is for SMEs to create the funding so that they get access to funding, but unfortunately we understand it does come at a price. At least if we're providing for 1.5%, we're keeping them away from the Shylocks that are charging 30% a month in some cases for the same kind of funding. So if we get that right, allow the entities to be able to charge the right fees, I think that's the right place to hit. Sorry, I'm taking too long on that question. You can see I'm a bit passionate about these things, I suppose. Hence the understanding of it. But you're right. If we can unlock this stuff, Honourable Governor, this country can fly. Our PPPs. At the moment, you'll see a very ambitious program of action, costing 200 and something billion emalangeni. We don't have the money as government. We don't have the kind of funding. Even if we try and increase the capital expenditure, you're talking of funding 10% of it, if we're lucky. So we need to understand it's absolutely government folks say we need to get the PPP arrangements right, we need to get boot arrangements right, we need to be able to get our SOEs to be able to maybe have sovereign guarantees stand behind them, then to raise a huge amount of funding. If we can get those things right, which we are working on at the moment, we have a PPP policy in Eswatini. We're busy working on the legislation. It'll be coming soon to have the PPP legislation in place, because any funder playing in that space wants to know there's legislation to support him in case something goes wrong. We're going to have this done, and we believe it's going to help to really unlock a lot of things. Getting arrears paid up will create trust. Absolutely. At the moment, we are saying, well, you know what, we're going to raise more debt if we raise money for arrears. For goodness sake, arrears is debt. debt in a very unhealthy category. You don't want debt in arrears category. It's still debt, but let's rather formalize it, raise the debt at the World Bank or ADB, whoever can help us on this front, and we then say now and settle this very not smart debt to have. So hence, if we think we're raising debt to pay arrears, we're just bluffing ourselves. Arrears is debt. And so for that reason, he's spot on. If we can get this right, which we believe in a matter of months, not even 6 months, before 6 months is over, we should really have arrears dealt with. And I believe once and for all, and I say this from really, if there's one person in this country that takes pain from arrears, it's myself, because I get calls. If I say every single day, I'm telling you every single day. And I try and take the calls, because if you try and manage, if you owe someone money, speak to them. Let them understand what the situation is. Don't ignore them. It just gets worse. So I try and do it. But so if I can tell you that if there's something I'd love to get sorted, it is arrears, and hence I think there's going to be a strong focus on it, and we are committing to have it sorted out in a few months' time. Are we sure about the growth? So we also had one or two touch. I think Marco also was talking about the growth. It's possibly too high. And again, I think the World Bank, IMF are talking about around a 5% growth, and we're talking about 8% growth. Number one, even if we hit the 5%, Governor, we are far above region, we are far above neighbors. We're shooting the lights out anyway at a 5%. At the moment, the 8% is really from a certain spike. We are just having a whole lot of mining entities coming on stream. And again, let's just say, I mean, there's an anthracite mine that's going to be turning over over 1 billion emalangeni in the first year of operation. And when you do that in an economy our size, that gives you a 1.5% or more than 1% growth just from one company. So what I'm saying is, because we're small, we do have these high impact things that could happen to us, and we believe now if we can start making sure every year there's 2 or 3 mines opening. Now we're in business. Now we're talking every year you have that. At the same time, a lot of our projects, Lucip Phase 2 coming on stream. You're talking of a few thousand hectares under cane. The cane crushing companies putting in the infrastructure to be able to handle that cane. But a lot of these things taking place in 2025, and central bank building. We're going to see a massive building in a year's time. It's going to be totally developed, Governor. It's amazing. I mean, I'm pulling everyone's leg. Shame. It won't be finished in a year's time, Marco. They'll still be starting the foundations. But all of this adds towards that growth. The extra billion we're spending on capital expenditure, real cash to real contractors buying bricks and mortar and employing people, it all has a big impact. And I'm optimistic. I'm an optimist. So this glass is this is 2 bottles of water here, not 1 bottle of water. But at the same time, I think it is measured with real things. Questions from Kango. So increase in the schools capital budget. What we do actually have, which is quite exciting on the schools capital budget, is we have Japan helping us, and Japan is actually building a new high school in every region this year. So even though it might not be reflected in the budget, we do have a certain amount of donor funding stepping in and actually giving us a lot of support in that space. Because you are right, our capital budget in education is quite low, especially if you compare it to recurrent and other ministries comparing capital to recurrent. It does stick out as an item that does look skewed. Effects of inflation, water and electricity impact on households. At the moment, the reason why I touched in my budget speech on households, I do take, when you talk of household expenditure, let's talk of where the most pressure is. It's really at the bottom end. It's your minimum wage earners, which in our country, we have tens of thousands of people in that category earning minimum wage. And so when you talk of household expenditure, we can talk about us in the room, but really, if we need to be sensitive, it is that bottom end which we need to be very sensitive to. And the reason why I touched on it is because at the moment we have, as a government, been focusing on minimum wage. Before we had the wages councils, they'll sit sometimes once every 2 or 3 years. They will sit there, you'll try and do something. But we've been very intentional over the last few years. And I can maybe let's use the textile sector, because we've got 20-something thousand people earning minimum wage in the textile sector in Matsapa. So it's kind of a niche. In the last 2 years, we've increased with 12% every year. On the 12% for those that are normal textile, 10% for those that are CMTs, and then a slightly less for those that are SMEs. But let's just say above 10% minimum wage increase in the textile sector for the minimum wage earners. We had a problem towards the end of last year. Towards the end of last year, we had textile companies wanting to go on strike because employees were seeing for the first time in their life, seeing PAYE being deducted from their payslips. They'd never seen it before. They thought the employers were cheating them by deducting PAYE. We had to send ERS to a few companies to go and explain what is PAYE. Explain to them it's not your employer taking the money. It is government. They've never seen it. Meaning that textile workers are now starting to, and it's with overtimes and with with certain things like that. But at the same time, you have a few companies with the employees earning more than 3,500 emalangeni per month. I mean, 3 years ago, it was 1.2, 1.3, 1,000 a month. So with the pressure that we are managing to get on the bottom end, we really believe, Governor, that even with the inflationary pressures, because the problem with inflation, the year that we are in, even though we have inflation of around 4%, the impact on the let's just say the minimum wage earner is almost zero. But last year, it wasn't like that. Last year, food inflation was around 14%, meaning that on that guy, even though we're saying inflation is 5%, inflation for that minimum earner is higher. And hence, I do agree that sometimes you find that skewedness when we say, oh no, for goodness sake, minimum wages increased with 10%, but it was, his wages, his inflation was lower. But for him, inflation was higher because he's in the food category. And hence, this year now, we do believe now that food inflation is almost zero and wage increase is still around double-digit growth. We believe now, and we're only going to start feeling it in this space now. We're going to start feeling that impact, and households should start feeling that the benefit from that. That's why we're trying to keep electricity and water and all those other costs below the minimum wage increases. We are looking at this, and we believe it's going the right direction. UNESWA is a problem, spot on. At the moment that the task teams work on it, we believe it's going to have good outcomes there. Grade 0, there's a lot of focus on grade 0, and I believe that's going to have a big impact on the education in the future. Then Mr. Dube come in as well, as an economist, to say nothing done about corruption. We need to see one big guy. It's what I said too. We do need to try to see more happening in the corruption space. He's 100% right. And I think the whole country is saying, let's at least see some action going on here. Youth unemployment, not enough focus on it. I don't agree with that one. I really believe, even though it looks like we're spending on capital expenditure, spending here, we're doing all of that specifically for employment. So I'm saying I think employment is our one red, and especially youth unemployment, is our one red hot reason why we're doing most of what we're doing. So even though it looks like we're doing it here, doing it there, we're not necessarily having a budget to say, okay, youth unemployment budget. But the whole capital expenditure is actually there so that you can get the youth employed. And the reason why education, all these things are giving the expenditure so that we can get the youth employed is really the main drive of almost the whole budget. So again, I think you touched on youth access. No tax incentives for the small guys. Again, our tax regime, I'm very proud of our tax regime being very sensitive to the poor. Governor, and again, if people say it's not, I believe it's ignorance out of the system. At the moment, if someone is an SME, if you are earning less than 50,000 emalangeni a year, you don't pay tax. Tax doesn't apply to you. If it's between 50,000 and a million, you're paying a presumptive tax. You're paying 1.75% of turnover, and you don't need auditors. We've made it very simple, very cheap to pay tax as an SME. At the moment, I think he used an example to say, someone wakes up to find you should have paid 33%. 33% is in the category of someone earning more than 250,000 a year. If you are earning 250,000 a year and you still think you shouldn't be paying tax, someone's living in a dream world here. What I'm saying is we do need to understand that when you do start earning above a certain category, you have to. Now, again, and one can say, people don't know it. Unfortunately, the way law applies is ignorance to the law is not an excuse. Every citizen of every country is required to know what the law says. Can we possibly do more in education? I think ERS is trying their best. Wherever you can, you find them trying to educate people, trying to teach, trying to open doors to say Segulula, and trying to open doors to say Slalapansis Kuluma, all these different things is really so that we can try and make it as easy as possible. And I don't know if there's another country in the region that has spent that much time and effort and ease to try to make sure that we don't have it. Small businesses starting to pay from day one. It's not the case. Small businesses, really, there are all those bottom ends. You don't even have to register for VAT unless you're more than 900,000 Emalangeni turnover a year. So I do really believe that the system is structured to really cushion the poor and to make sure that business startups are not overly tax burdened. If you start up, you don't pay tax, but you do need to be aware of at what point you need to start paying. And at that point, please enter the tax system and understand what you need to do there. People ignorant on tax, I touched on. Economists look at the market and the man on the street, the budget. I realized that as he was saying that it's the man on the street that our budget director started coughing. It's because of the statements that are being made here. You make our poor budget director start coughing from such statements. But no, I'm just joking on that front. At the moment, we are highly sensitive, Governor. I know it doesn't look like it. We're sitting in an office in Babaan doing it, but we are highly sensitive to trying to make sure that the impacts on the poor are not much. And if one does find previous year, Christmas, it looks like less people in the shops, the numbers are not saying that. The numbers are saying that there's constant growth in these figures. The figures coming through are showing that there's constant growth in the retail, constant growth in imports, constant growth in the budget. I think at the moment, because you find that there's so many more retail shops, you might find as a kid there was maybe one big Pick and Pay, let's just say, in a Babaan, and now everyone went there before Christmas. Today you're finding there's 50, kind of similar size shops, and you might find it doesn't look like the same, but the numbers are showing that it is increased. Marco was touching on the 8% growth also being ambitious. We understand, we agree with that, and it's possibly high. We didn't sound optimistic on the 2 billion of tax. I think we need to understand ERS. They get a bonus if they actually reach their targets. So by them saying they can collect another 2 billion of tax, they're saying that on the basis of if they are pitching it too high, they don't get a bonus. And they've hit a bonus last year. Sorry, they didn't hit a bonus for a few years, but last year they did hit a bonus, and this year it looks like they're going to hit their bonus. And so I can probably, if they are saying they can collect 2 billion, they're shooting themselves in the foot if they're pitching. They are pitching it high, but I don't think it's beyond reach. I do believe, because I know of the measures that they are doing. At the moment, we lose a lot of tax, a lot of VAT in our retail space. And they are doing, and many retail shops just don't pay the VAT, or they cheat government on the VAT, which means they are charging the customers the VAT, and they're not remitting it. And they're doing. But we're doing two big things to close that gap, and we believe that gap is going to give us at least a 2 billion. Wage bill to GDP, again, I think he was touching on, he compares wage bill to GDP, I compare wage bill to expenditure. But even to GDP, it's come from 14% down to 11%. I can't agree with him more. The previous salary review put our economy into a tailspin. And we ended up doing the salary review. We paid civil servants that year, I think it was a 1.6 or 1.8 billion Emalangeni. And that's where we started with arrears. That's where we started getting into all sorts of trouble. So once again, the salary review we're having now, we wait for the outcomes of it. Civil servants do need to receive what is due to them. We need to pay them well. We need to honor them. They carry our country. They really are civil servants to us as a nation. But at the same time, we cannot let any impact there cripple the economy in the process. So it's about getting that balance right, Governor. We believe the budget that we've provided is towards the bottom end of possibly what needs to happen there. Hence, we do have what we have done. We've set up a contingency fund within the budget. The Constitution says we should. We have never done it before. This year was the first year we did a 200 million. In the budget we've presented now 350 million. So we've got funds like that in the budget, even so if there is something there, we can accommodate that. We might need to negotiate with the unions to say, can we make it a 2-year process? We'll see how we handle it when it comes. But we really can't allow it just to knock the economy six love and cause us trouble again. Arrears end is good, but it needs to close the gap. We need to close the tap, and he's 100% right. I believe, Governor, that the tap is closed. I believe that our expenditure to budget, closed compared to maybe before. At the moment, our budgets, we've fully financed budgets. We're making sure we know where the money's come from. We raise the money in the year. At the same time, we really make sure that we spend within the budgets. At the moment, the budget expenditure is a lot better than what it has been before, and we believe that the tap is virtually closed. And we should now, if we settle arrears, we should really be able to make sure if we raise the money that we claim we need to raise in the budget, we should be fine. Non-performing loans are concerned. I touched on it earlier. I agree. We do need to have a closer look at that. The banks, I'm sure, the ones that are responsible are the most concerned of that because it hits them straight on the bottom line. and we need to give them all the support they need actually to be able to try and reduce the NPLs. Fix the social there's a very good point. He's saying fix the social registry, because the moment the money we are spending on our social sector is imbalanced, and we've got a big problem here as a country, Governor. At the moment, we got a social expenditure, and 50, 60, 70% of people that are receiving grants, whatever kind of grant, be it elderly grant or OVCs or those kind of things, they actually don't need it. It's actually someone that might be receiving already a huge pension, and they still go and collect the 500-600 ML Guinness elderly grants. If we get the social registry right, and we're very clear, and we can target the people that need it most, we can have a much bigger impact with the same expenditure, a much bigger impact on that. It's being worked on at the moment, and I hope we can do the politically a very difficult thing, but do the right thing to actually target those that need it most. Lastly, Honourable Khumalo, and thank you everyone for the accolades being given. Please understand, it's the Ministry of Finance people sitting here with me in the room that really are the people that need the accolades, not myself, but really appreciate all the kind words that have been given. And thank you, Honourable, for recognising all of that. But RENAC, at the moment, these old planes are very costly. And in hindsight, Honourable, you might have a very good point. And again, it's not about do we possibly stop aeroplanes. I think the aeroplanes are already giving us a positive economic impact. At the moment, people around the world want to know they can access this country. If someone is wanting to make an investment, want to know they can fly into somewhere, they can fly from Cape Town, they can fly from Joburg at any, more or less within every 2 or 3 hours a day, and they can come to Eswatini. The moment they feel restricted, it feels like, this country, little country in Africa, you almost can't get to it, and you create that feeling that investment isn't going to come. So, but the question might be, do we possibly replace them with newer aircraft? There's definitely a discussion we need to have a look. They are costing us a bit too much. The ICC drain, unfortunately, as much as I fully believe in when the ICC is running, it's going to have a massive impact on our tourism industry. The building of this ICC has really been something which we're not proud of as government, and we need to really get it right, get it sorted out, and really bring that under control. SO reforms is critical. Almost finishing now, Governor, and that we fully agree with that. And I believe the PU legislation is going to be able to give us the drive we need there. Move fast on the cannabis legislation. At the moment, it's being drafted. It'll be coming to Parliament within a matter of months. And you're right, there's two ways to do it. We can just cancel the other one. We can cancel the legislation that's currently prohibiting it, as well as hemp, which around the world, hemp is being opened up every day. But at the same time, I think the better way is to actually have a law to control it and to make sure it's done in a certain way. Finance bill, again, spot on. And again, what we possibly need to consider is possibly putting a clause in the finance bill, is to say every year, 1st of April, we add CPI to these kind of charges. And we can even maybe look at something in there, but otherwise we have to bring the finance bill every year. You can't come with a shock every 10 years. And now you try and say, well, inflation's now been 100%, add 100%. The nation there'll be an outcry on that. So he's 100% right. Either must bring it every year or put a clause in there to say there's an inflationary link. Governor, you touched on the debt serviceability. Even though obviously big countries looks like, because they're a big country, there's more liquidity, debt servicing is easy, us as a small country, but it's all about ratios actually, not necessarily country size. And so hence we don't necessarily look at the amount of debt, we really look at that ratio. And to us, the most critical one is the debt to GDP ratio. If we can keep our debt to GDP ratio right, we fully believe that in the future, even if there are interest rate spikes like we have come out of now, one should be able to afford as a country because we're not looking at quantum, being a small country, we're looking at ratios. Stabilization fund. So unfortunately, Governor, you are spot on, where at the moment we might loan money at 10% and Treasury, or even 11%, even as it here on Treasury bond market, but at the same time we have a stabilization fund where our interest rate will be lower than that. But at the same time, unfortunately, if we don't ring fence these things, Governor, as you know, you find government, we need money so desperately every day of the week. We'll have depleted this fund down to zero in no time had we not had it ring fenced and stuck in an entity and protect ourselves from grabbing it whenever we need the money. And so hence the way we've ring fenced them is really politically the smartest move. And that's why you're spot on. From a banking perspective, it doesn't make sense, but from a political perspective, it's the right thing to do. And hence, I'd rather stick with how we're doing it now. Thank you, Governor. Sorry for taking so long.
Let's give a minister the big hand of applause. No, Minister, you didn't take long. This was your stage. This is to reflect with you, and I think you've had very honest, candid responses and reflections from the team. And you could see, I mean, they could go on and on and on. But I think the points that were raised, your team is here, and the central bank is here. Let's see how we sort of assist each other to make sure that we take this great nation to heights that are untold. I would like to ask one question. I saw some of the questions there. I think the VAT one is the one that I think you didn't talk about. It is the aftermath or the after, what do you call it, post-budget event, where we hear that the budget in South Africa was delayed because of debate amongst the government of national unity. And one of the contentious issues was the proposal of the VAT. To be honest, I haven't checked the latest, even when it will be presented, the budget. What's your take on that? I know it creates distortion, arbitrage, but what does it mean to us as a nation? If you bring it in, what are the implications, especially to the men on the street? And are you going to do it?
Governor, unfortunately, this is something, I mean, our plan is not to raise VAT. And in fact, you know, if we had to raise tax, we wouldn't even raise VAT without South Africa raising it, because the cross-border trade is a nightmare. 70% of our trade is with South Africa, coming and going. And so for that reason, if there's a difference in VAT, crossing the border is a nightmare, meaning what you paid on this side, you have to claim on that side. What you claim, you have to pay, you have to top up. It's just, and we've had it before for a few months, and it was absolute chaos. And so for that reason, unfortunately, we have to stay in lockstep with South Africa on VAT. If we had wanted to increase tax in Eswatini, we would have increased them somewhere this year. We would have lifted PAY, you know, done something. We're not planning on doing tax. But unfortunately, if South Africa lifts VAT, we have to lift VAT as our major trading partner. So the nation must understand, and please watch the screens to see what South Africa does. With the pressure they're under, I personally don't think they'll go 17%. Do they possibly go 16%? Do they do something? I don't know. But I must let the nation know that if South Africa lifts the rate, we will have to lift the rate. We'll have to do it very quickly. If Parliament can please help us, obviously it needs Parliament's approval too. We'll have to probably fast-track the process somehow, so we can, if they put a date, that we can somehow even be in line with the date, because even days is a nightmare. And so for that reason, Governor, unfortunately, on the VAT front, we'll have to follow South Africa.
Thank you. I know there could be questions on the floor, but honestly, in the interest of time, I would like to leave it here. But with just one point, and it is very timely, especially for the nation and the public to understand the dynamics of our intertrade linkages with South Africa. Sometimes we say these things loosely, but there are some fundamentals that we need to look at in a serious manner. For example, ensuring that we maintain the peg. It's very, very important that our monetary policy protects the peg, management of the reserves, and also the fiscus to some degree. So these issues, whilst we look at domestic data, inform our decisions with domestic data, we cannot turn a blind eye on what it means to be part of a common monetary area and also being part of a major economy, being a smaller economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I really want to thank you for being such a great audience. And I also want to appreciate the team at the bank. Thank you very much to all of you, those that have worked hard to be and to get to where we are. Thank you. And also for giving me the opportunity to be your moderator. Thank you. And good morning. Back to you, Program Director. And I request, in the interest of time, that maybe we wait and we pass back to the Program Director who will do the necessary. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Please clap hands for them. You see, the governor was sitting down so that Can I welcome the Deputy Governor to make closing remarks? And thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience, Deputy Governor. Anyone who has a question, please, there is still breakfast outside. I'm hoping that you engage the minister during that process where you just get a cup of coffee. I like Jacobs, so you can try one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Program Director, Honorable Minister, members of both Houses of Parliament, senior government officials, our panelists, our development partners, captains of industry, distinguished guests, good morning. Good morning. Before I go through my remarks, Minister, let me start by saying I've been to many places. I've seen many things. One thing I know, we do develop good policies. What we need to do is just be steadfast and implement. And I also want to applaud you, Minister, for starting a very difficult process of public sector reforms. You were able to get it through, passed and approved. We just have to implement it. And I align with you to say, let's get the bill and then go through with it, and then we can make other steps. With that, it is with great satisfaction and gratitude that I stand before you today to deliver the closing remarks for the 2025-2026 post-budget seminar organized by the Central Bank of Eswatini. My sincere appreciation goes to the dedicated staff of the Central Bank for their planning and execution of this insightful event. The seamless flow of discussions and the high level of management we have witnessed here today is a testament of their hard work. Honorable Minister, your presence and engagement has been invaluable. We're particularly grateful for your detailed presentation of the 2025-2026 budget and your willingness to address the pertinent questions and concerns that were raised by our esteemed panelists and participants. This seminar has once again provided a crucial platform for robust dialogue and informed analysis. We have all gained valuable insights in the intricacies of the national budgeting, and appreciated the delicate balance that has to be struck while ensuring that all critical needs and sectors are well provided for to anchor inclusive growth and development. I commend you, Minister, Honorable Minister, and all contributors for your clarity and expertise. To our exceptional panelists, both returning and new, thank you for your insightful contributions. Your diverse perspective, in depth and analysis enriched our understanding of the budget's implications and potential impact on our economy. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all participants for your active engagement and thoughtful contributions. Your keen interest and insightful questions have demonstrated a shared commitment to the economic well-being of Emaswati. Ladies and gentlemen, the honest and constructive deliberations we have had today will undoubtedly provide our Honorable Minister and his team with valuable guidance as they embark on the implementation of the 2025-2026 budget. As the Central Bank of Eswatini, we reaffirm, Honorable Minister, our commitment to providing sound policy advice and unwavering support to the government. We are ready to work hand in hand with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that monetary policy preserves the value of the Lilangeni and our national reserves to underpin the successful implementation of the budget. Honorable Minister, the Central Bank, together with the Ministry, will continue to navigate the economic challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for the Kingdom. We at the Central Bank are confident that the outcome of this seminar will contribute significantly to the effective execution of the 2025-2026 budget, ultimately benefiting eMaswati. Once again, thank you to everyone for your participation and contributions. I want to make a special appreciation to the participants that were connected virtually. We will continue to have coffee on your behalf. May God bless us all and grant us safe travel as we return to our respective duties. With these remarks, I thank you all.
There is a comment. There is a comment I expected from the Deputy Governor. Hello? There is a comment I expected from the Deputy Governor. They were complaining, Honorable Minister, that when they looked at the panel, the diversity in the panel, I think we need a new CEO who's a lady. I'm joking. He's going to kill me. I know he's going to kill me when we have coffee. I think it's now time for me to say thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience. And the minister got some nuggets, and I think even parliamentarians did get a few things that they can discuss with the minister. I'm just worried, Minister, MPs were very quick to say they are aligned with your budget. I think there's a lot of things that you'll expect. It's very unusual. But it's a wonderful thing that at least the direction in terms of development priorities, there is alignment. Can I ask Mr. Psiga to come and pray for us? And I'm told there is no breakfast now, Governor. There is coffee. So please enjoy the coffee.
Thank you. Let's bow our head to pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning once again in the name of Jesus Christ for this wonderful day, the Lord, that we have had. We invited you to be in our midst when it started, and surely, my God, we are confident that you are here with us. We thank you, my God, for the deliberations and the discussions that we have had in the name of Jesus Christ. I believe, Lord, they are to the glory and to the success of this kingdom. Father, I thank you for the King. I thank you for the Indlovukazi. I thank you, my God, for the cabinet. And I bring before you, my God, the Minister of Finance, as he oversees the work, my God, that you have bestowed upon him. I pray grace upon him in the name and in the blood of Jesus Christ. Father, grant him your wisdom and your understanding in the name of Jesus. For we understand, my God, that this job is not, my God, easy. For I pray for him that you release your Holy Spirit and your anointing upon him. In the name and in the blood of Jesus Christ. I pray for the governor, I pray for the executive, I pray for the staff of the central bank and that of the Ministry of Finance. In the name of Jesus Christ, let your favor and your grace be upon them in Jesus' mighty name. Father God, we acknowledge you as our God. We know we cannot do anything without you. That's why, my God, we come before you every time we face these situations and challenges in the name and in the blood of Jesus. Father God, we pray as we leave this place, going to our different places, let your traveling mercies and your grace rest upon each and every one of us in the name and in the blood of Jesus Christ. We thank you, and the church say amen.